This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, health, tax profession advice. We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that might arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional medical advice. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the host or the management. This podcast may contain adult themes, so parental discretion is advised. Today we have joining us is our guest today is Bobbi, and she's going to expand on her credentials, but she's a certified regenerative health practitioner and founder of B4U, which is a limited liability company. A survivor of mold toxicity, Bobbi empowers others to detoxify from environmental toxins and restore health at a cellular level, using a regenerative approach that addresses root causes and fosters lasting wellness. So, Bobbi, we're happy to have you here and to speak on such a very important and not well-known topic. So,
right.
You may go ahead and expound on your credentials and.
Okay, sure. So I am, like you said already, a certified regenerative health and detox practitioner, and I have a private practice in the western suburbs of Chicago in Wheaton, Illinois. And I work with people mostly virtually, but I do in-person consultations and coaching. And I have niched myself down over these last few years into working with people that have chronic illnesses, and they have been maybe playing whack-a-mole with their symptoms with their doctors, trying to figure out, how to get their back better or lose weight or get rid of their headache or their skin condition, or maybe they've got some really diagnosis that's pretty yucky, like a cancer diagnosis or an autoimmune issue. So I work with people working on finding the root cause of why they have what they have or their symptoms. And usually starting with people to work on their foundation and all the things that we know we're supposed to do, but we don't do, right? Sleep, eat, drink, eating whole foods, getting rid of the junk, limiting alcohol and drugs and things like that. So my passion lies in helping people realize that their toxic bucket is just too full in the world we live in, and that really reducing your toxic load is not just an option, it's necessary on a regular basis for people to do some type of cleansing and detoxing and really cleaning up their internal organs and systems. So that's what I work with on people that are ready to do the work. But my latest passion has truly been in educating people on mold toxicity. Excuse me. Because I went through mold toxicity and I went through chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which was a result of being so sick with mold. So I know we're going to talk about a lot of things tonight on the podcast, but that's definitely something that we'll probably be touching on for sure.
Yes, I think I remember when we had our preliminary meeting that I told you I had experienced toxic mold.
Yes.
I was living in an apartment, and apparently the person above me had a leak, but I didn't know, and it was growing mold and all of that. And every time I go in the apartment, I just feel sick. If I'm outside, I'm okay, and I said, enter. It was just, so I just spent a lot of money getting it sorted out, Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't connect the dots until somebody maybe mentions something. And usually in my practice, when I'm talking to people, I've really started asking them, did you grow up in a home that flooded? Did you have any kind of leaks in your house now? Like my son, when he went away to college, he had an air conditioner in his dorm room that was full of mold, and he was sick that first semester, lots of colds and sinus stuff. And that was not typically what he was like. And so I think their air conditioning was dripping, and they had the maintenance come in, and the guy opened it up and was like, oh my gosh, so it's everywhere. It's just whether people know that it's there or know that it's actually a big deal when you find it, because you got to take care of it properly. You can't just throw bleach all over it and scrub it down. You got to take
No. It's a technique with somebody coming with special equipment to test the air quality inside their Just
Yeah,
go
because I
talk
remember
with,
when you told me your story, I'm like, do you still live there? And you're like, no.
no, no,
And
no.
I was like, I hope that they cleaned it up properly because you can, you can make a mess out of a mess.
Yeah, I got somebody professional to do it, and I lived there. I lived there about a year, 18 months after that, and I was okay.
Yep,
So it was
that's good.
sorted out properly. I think I have a high sensitivity to it also because I've been in other places and I can't stay there. I feel like I'm stifling. I feel like I can't breathe. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. I'm same with me. That's one of the reasons I actually went from having mold toxicity into something called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I had been, when I thought back, growing up, I know my basement flooded as a kid. And I remember my parents down there with the shop vac and ripping up that little indoor outdoor carpet and throwing it out and
right,
buying some new stuff. And they did the
right,
best they could, but they didn't have, they cleaned it up, but it still was kind of dank and wet down there. I remember
right.
dehumidifier. So I know I was exposed even as a young kid. So I think my toxic bucket had been filling up a lot until when I got exposed really heavily to a crawl space that had mold in it that I was in. And that's when the lights went out, unfortunately, about 6 years ago. So I am recovered. I'm doing much better, but it was a process. And
Yeah,
what people don't realize, like you said,
yeah.
18 months until you kind of felt like you were back, all back to normal.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so the first question was, what sparked your initial journey into regenerative health, and how did your personal experience shape your perspective on wellness? But you sort of segued into it, so you can probably expand on this a
Well,
little
I
bit.
will tell you about the regenerative health piece to it. So there's multiple approaches to working with someone that has mold toxicity or any kind of toxicity. There's, the kill approach. There's, lots of IVs to draw things out. There's all kinds of pharmaceuticals. There's all kinds of different things. And I started with an approach that had some pharmaceutical in it. It was a binder that they were putting in. A binder actually attaches when you take it as an oral, and it attaches to the mold and it sends it out through your urine or your stool. And I
Mhm.
started with that and some other things, and I was getting better, but it wasn't until I had talked to a health coaching friend who is now my business partner, and she was struggling a lot with her health and thinking she was going to shut her health coaching business for a while and had Lyme and some other issues. And I said, why don't you double check that you don't have mold toxicity and chronic inflammatory response? So she went ahead and went and did what you do and came back and was like, I do. I have mold. I grew up in a home with mold and I didn't know that I had been carrying it around in my body and that kind of stuff. So I was the one who kind of helped her get going in the right direction. And then she circled back when she was working on her getting better and said, I think there's this approach called the regenerative health approach that you should take. And so I learned more about it. And basically, it's an approach where you use food as medicine, whole food as medicine, and you alkalize your body. So you take your body from being super acidic, which is what mold will do to you, and all the other things, any other toxins, smoke, drugs, alcohol, even certain foods are going to make you more acidic, processed foods, stress, chemicals. And once you work your body to be more alkaline, that's when the body can calm down, you have less acidity, and it can start to detox especially if you work on the different detox pathways and opening them. So I thought, well, what have I got to lose? I'm starting to feel better, but I've kind of hit a plateau. So I went ahead and worked with that protocol, and my eyes were completely opened. My practice changed as far as what I was going to be working with my clients on. And I decided in 2022 to go back to school to get my regenerative health and detox practitioner certification. So when you were saying, how did mold change that? Well, mold led me to the regenerative approach, which has now restored my health. And so I'm reaching back to other people to be like, hey, there are other ways to go about helping you, whether it's cancer or toxins or autoimmunity, you can do the regenerative approach. So it was a big game changer in my life.
Yes. Are doctors aware of this regenerative approach? Are
Uh,
doc-
I would I would have to say conventional medicine doctors are not. Functional medicine doctors partially are, but regenerative health really, really tries to work around putting someone on a man-made supplement or giving them a pharmaceutical. And so both of those, conventional medicine, you're typically going to have somebody either give you a pharmaceutical, they're going to want to see if they can cut it out or, burn it out or, kind of stuff, and or medicate it out or suppress it with medication that just suppresses that particular symptom, but it doesn't get to the root cause of why you're having that symptom. So
Right.
that's the piece of it. It's like conventional medicine is life-saving. When you're in the emergency room, you're in a car, need surgery, but it isn't always the best at getting to the root of why you are having what you're having, especially when somebody's been chronically ill with, like in my case, I had over 30 symptoms that I was dealing
Yes.
with. And so when somebody comes to a conventional medicine office with that kind of case, the doctor's kind of like, I'm not really sure which one to tackle first. So they tackle the most screaming one first, but it's really hard because they're not nutritionists. They're not going to work with you a ton on your diet. They're not going to talk about a whole lot about lifestyle issues. They may talk to you a little bit about sleep and, stress and that kind of stuff, but that's not their wheelhouse. Their wheelhouse is to, like I said, give you some type of prescription or take a test or cut it out or burn it out or whatever. So
Okay.
that's why I like regenerative health, because it's the main thing about it is there's something in your body that's not working right. And it's usually not just one thing. And
Yes.
so when you can go to the root and you can start to pick away and peel away, like, how's your thyroid doing? How's your adrenal glands
Right.
doing? How's your digestion? What's your skin like? Regenerative health people, a lot of the people that graduated from the Institute of Regenerative Health where I went, we learned how to read a facial map. So I can look at someone's face from a picture or in person and look at the different features and lines and stuff like that, not for age, but to give me clues what organs are not working well. We also look at your iris, and your iris actually, when I learned this, it blew my mind that your iris can give you a lot of information about your tissues in your body and which ones are struggling.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, really, really cool when you have your iris read. I was like blown away by that. So, and your tongue is actually something that is very telling, and you can look at your tongue every day if you knew what to look for and kind of see what's going on, because it's real time going on there in your tongue. So regenerative health is one of those things that I think it's the future of medicine. I think people are going to be shifting more towards regenerative health and away from heavy supplementation with all kinds of man-made supplements, because your body really has to, when a supplement comes in that's been made in a factory or in a lab or something like that, the body has to decide what is friend and what is filler. And so it has to, first of all, break it down, which is difficult. And second, it has to kind of sift through and decide what pieces it's going to take. And then it has to clean up the mess from breaking it down, the things that it didn't need. So although supplements can bridge the gap for some people for a portion of the time, it's not really solving the issue of why you need that supplement in the first place. So I always kind of direct people to use a whole food source. What can we change in what you're eating on a daily basis? What supplements or additions can we add that are made from whole foods? So that's kind of where I'm coming from with the regenerative approach. And we're looking for, where's the roadblock in the body? Where are you not flowing? Where's your, maybe you've had some surgeries and you've got a lot of scar tissue, or maybe you have tons of stress in your life. Maybe you have trauma. Maybe you have, are actually living in mold. There's people that are living in mold. So every day their body is getting insulted. So it's kind of like a detective work. And when you kind of start on the symptoms, you can say, well, those symptoms are related to this gland, or those symptoms are related to this process. So let's figure out why that gland is not working. What is causing that to not work? And then when you go in, you work on, I call it a kickstand. You bring up those glands and organs and tissues by giving it what it needs, by filling it up with the right nutrition and the right products and things like that that are going to help them. And then you work on opening those detox pathways so that all of the junk in the trunk, like I like to call it, can get out the back door. So it's kind of like this process of cleaning house.
So what are some of the early symptoms and signs that may you that that people can realize that they do have a problem?
Early symptoms, well, I would say I can tell you a lot about what I went through. Um, it was a lot of issues with sleep. Sleep immediately starts to get wonky. You can get insomnia pretty bad. You can get your anxiety can go up because the mycotoxins which come out of the mold, which are these spores that come out of the
Yes, the
mold.
spores. Yes, yes.
Yeah, they actually cross the blood-brain barrier. So they get into the brain. You can have brain fog, memory issues,
Yes.
anxiety, trouble sleeping, because your pineal gland is what's up inside your brain, and that's one of the regulators of your sleep. You can have mood dysregulation, lots of anger. You can have frequent urination, especially at night. And you can have ringing in your ears. You can have neuropathy or
Oh,
problems
wow.
with fingers and toes. You could have sinus infections. A lot of people that are chronic sinus infection people, they unfortunately have some form of toxicity and probably mold up in their sinuses. And so what mold does is it goes systemic. So it doesn't just touch, oh, I have a little mold in my left cheek. It's actually in your body and it's
In your
circulating,
body.
you know. So there's a lot of symptoms that you can have. Hot flashes were one. I know when at my worst, you have temperature regulation where some people just stop sweating. They don't sweat and they don't really maybe even realize it until everybody else around them is maybe really sweaty in a workout class or
Mhm.
place.
Right,
Like, no, I'm not sweating. Well, if you can't sweat, that's one of the ways the body releases toxins.
right. Mhm.
And I was having 25 massive blistering hot flashes a day. I know I counted one time, and they were debilitating. The kind where you're just not just plain menopause hot flashes and stuff, but just like where you literally think your back's on fire, you know? So, and everybody kind of has different things. For me, it was a lot of nervous system dysregulation. It hit my nervous system really, really hard, where someone else might have a lot of gastrointestinal issues like constipation or diarrhea or gas or bloating, really struggling to lose weight. All of a sudden, they put on a bunch of weight and they're like, I haven't even changed anything. I haven't started eating extra or things like that. And
Right,
sometimes that can be your toxin load.
right. So how has the awareness of toxin everyday products shifted your lifestyle? And what are some changes you recommend to others?
The number one thing I would recommend to others is to filter your water. When you're at home, filter your water. So what that means is don't drink right out of the tap, because you can put in your zip code at the website EWG. So Environmental Working Group is what that stands for, EWG.org. And you can
Mm-hmm.
put in your zip code and find out what's in your water and what's been tested in your water, how good your water matches up with being healthy. Because people would be surprised if they test their tap water that it's not something that they really want to be drinking on a daily basis. Some parts of the country are better than others, but for the majority, that would be one of the things I would say to please figure out a way to filter your tap water. And there's all kinds of different ways. There's the good, better, best kind of thing. You can do a Brita pitcher or some type of pitcher all the way up to the, mega filtration system for your house. It really depends on the amount of money that you can spend on it and put into it, but any kind of filtration is better than none. And stop drinking out of plastic. Those plastic um, water bottles.
So the water in the water bottle isn't good for us to drink?
Well, it's good to drink the water, but when you're drinking water out of those plastic like single-use bottles, especially the ones where you just grab it and it's cracking and it's like
Right, right, yeah, yeah.
that's like you've got a lot of microplastics in there.
Mm-hmm.
Microplastics are something that are going to be in the water that you're drinking, especially if that case of water's been heated up on a truck somewhere, and it's got the microplastics in there. So that would be the one thing is filter your water and then spend some time in your kitchen looking at what you're cleaning with. What do you actually
Yes,
clean with? Is every
yeah,
time you something, is it spraying in the air and you're like, kind of getting like that yucky feeling in the back of your throat?
right,
Or what are you using in the laundry room? Get educated on what you should not be putting into your laundry. And
right.
use simple things like I use white vinegar anytime I'm washing anything that like laundry with
Mm-hmm.
sheets, towels, smelly
Mm-hmm.
work clothes. I use white vinegar. I stay away from the things that have a scent because
Right.
the scents are what's disrupting so much of our hormones because in order for a chemical to be in a product, they have to attach it to the scent has to be attached to a chemical. And the chemical
Right.
to go in your body and actually mimic our hormones like estrogen. So that's why people can have hormone dysregulation just simply because they use way too much fragrance, burn candles, use the fabric softener that we all can smell when you walk past the house, spraying the perfume all over and having the air fresheners or even the soap that has just a pretty scent in it. If it's not naturally put into the product, like from lemon juice or an essential organic
Right.
oil, it's going to be chemical based. And it just really is like an onslaught. Your bucket just fills up all day long when you're using products that are not healthy.
Right. Right. Can you explain the process of detoxification in regenerative health?
Explain the process. So typically what you would want to be
At a very high level. High level.
yeah. Typically what you would want to be doing is thinking about, I always call it close the front door and open the
Right.
back. So you close the front door, meaning don't let things in that you are not good for you. So clearly we all know eating a lot of processed foods, high sugar, drinking alcohol, smoking, drugs, all of that,
Mhm.
those are not our friends. So really take a good look at what you're eating, what you're bringing in, and then look at like the things that you bring into your home. What are they made of? Do they have a scent? Like, when you get something really new and it's like, wow, that really, really, really smells like it could be a rug or a carpet or a pillow or something, and it's off gassing, what they call off gassing. Really think about that. Like, do you really want to have that in your home continually off gassing for months until it, is like that? We've put things that we have had to purchase and they're like that. We've put it outside for several days, and just let it off gas out there so that we don't have to deal with it. So closing the front door, meaning don't let things in that you don't need to, like I just mentioned, all the chemicals and changing out your laundry detergent, look at your body care stuff, look at all of that. And then the other piece is you have to open the back door. So if you're not going to the restroom and having bowel movements every day, at least 2 a day, you are really missing out on the opportunity to release a lot of junk out of the trunk if you're
Right.
back. So getting that flowing, sweating, and going to the bathroom, opening up the detox pathways, and exercising helps with your lungs to get stronger because we actually blow off about 70% of our toxin bucket comes out of our lungs through our breath. So
Really?
if you're a person who sits on the couch a lot or behind a computer, doesn't really get out of breath much other than maybe going to up the stairs to go to bed or, something like that, you're missing out on that opportunity to get that flow going out through your lungs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really good information. That is what I was trying to find out. It's not a popular field. It's not a popular field that people know about. So I just was trying to find out from you, when people have these conditions, the doctor's not telling them that they need to go to you. So how do they know, to go to someone like you that have these specializations?
Lorna, that's a really good question because that's how health coaches spend a lot of our time doing is getting out in front of people, right? Getting people to realize that, yes, the doctor's important and you do need a doctor. I'm not saying not to go to your doctor, but they're not going to fill the void. They're not going to give you that education or that foundational push that you need. Because a lot of people, honestly, I would say 80% of the people going into the doctor, if they would go home, clean out the refrigerator, get moving, get to bed on time, and drink some water and eat whole foods, you would be amazed how much healthier our country would be if people would just do the foundational things. And that's the problem. They want a quick fix. They want a pill. They want it to be easy. They don't want to disrupt their lifestyle or change something that maybe they've done all their life, like eat Captain Crunch
Right.
breakfast, right? And where's that gotten a lot of people, when they're in their 40s and 50s and you start hearing like I'm 58 and you start to hear people like, oh, did you hear about so and so? And I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to hear what happened. And you're hearing heart attack, stroke, cancer, autoimmune conditions, Parkinson's. I mean, just all of that. And a lot of that could be mitigated if we could change what's called the epigenetics, which is the environment that surrounds our genes. If we
Right.
make that clean and healthy and happy, we get out of jobs that are stressing the heck out of us and we find things that bring us joy and we adjust our lifestyle to work with our nervous system and lower your stress load, there'd be so much less illness in this world.
Right. Right.
So as far as
Right.
finding people like me, your doctor's probably not going to go, hey, go find a health coach and get yourself in shape. They're just not because they're not used to working with health coaches. And that's one of the things that I've tried to do is reach out to doctors and be like, hey, this is what I do. I could actually help you with your clients or your patients and help them actually follow the plan that you've put into place. And I think that some doctors, will think it's a good thing, but other doctors are like, no, I don't really want you to do that. You're going to screw up my protocol and that kind of stuff. So it's just education. It's education and it's results. It's somebody taking the time to think outside the box. And usually when somebody comes to me that's pretty sick, that maybe has multiple diagnoses, we usually walk through their history and it's like, well, I've tried that, I've done that, they put me on this, they put me on that, I had this surgery, they took out this part of me and all of that. And it's like, well, you're still not where you want to be. So are you going to keep doing the same thing that you've always done, or are you going to course correct and try something that's safe and makes sense? Because usually when I go through the lymphatic system health and I explain to somebody that your lymphatic system is one of the biggest most important systems in your body. And people are like, my what? My lymphatic system. All I know is that they take out lymph nodes when they have cancer in them. And it's like, well, I explain them what lymphatic system does. And then they're like, well, nobody ever said that. I didn't know that I had to move my body for my lymphatic system to flow. So usually when you educate people, they kind of go, it makes sense. And that's when I feel like people kind of come around and they're like, so tell me what I need to do.
Right. 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 Wow. So sad that, that people aren't being educated. Well, this is a program that educates people anyhow. So,
Yes, it
uh,
is. Yeah.
yes, I think a lot of people are going to appreciate this. So, can you talk about your journey from patient to practitioner and how that has impacted the way you support others? Your journey, how does it impact how you support others?
So my journey, let's see. The short version, I actually just did a webinar last night and I had to explain my story. But I was one of those people growing up, did everything, did sports, tried to get good grades, all that kind of stuff, and headed off into adulthood, really working hard to please everyone, make sure I was a fixer, I was the person that people relied upon. And then things started happening in my family. Like my mom passed away of Alzheimer's. My brother passed away of lifestyle issues like alcoholism and things 10 weeks after my mom.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
yeah, it was a shock. And then my dad passed away 3 years later. My dog died. My kids started leaving the nest. And I was just like so full of grief. It was crazy. And I wasn't handling it well. Plus, I was on burnout mode, just taking care of everybody else. So when I did get exposed to mold on the heavy side, like I mentioned, it was early on in life. I'm sure I was, but when I really got the big one, I went down like a rock. So brain fog, anxiety, like I said, insomnia. So once I put the pieces together, like something's really wrong with me. I can't even exercise and get out of the chair a few hours later because I'm so sore, because that's what happens with chronic inflammatory response syndrome is you get inflamed all over globally. And once I figured out working with a neurological chiropractor and we were working together and he was trying to help me with some symptoms I was having, and we both kind of like, I think we need to investigate mold. And once we figured that out and I started on my journey to recover from mold, I
Mhm.
really truly felt like I had been given a gift. Not that I got sick and that was fun, but that I was be able to turn around and help people get their life back after they had been suffering from mold or any other toxins. So for me, I think it's made me very, very, very passionate because I don't think toxins get enough credit in the medical community. And 2 years ago yesterday, my sister passed away of pancreatic cancer. So I've lost my mom, my dad, and my sister and my brother, and I'm only 58. And I have a twin brother left, thank goodness. And I truly believe that my sister's pancreatic cancer was somewhat toxin based as well. And so from then on, I kind of decided I'm going to be bold with telling people like, you got to live a cleaner life. And if you're, doing things or you are unaware, because some of it is just unaware, right? You got to get aware. You got to get woke up to the fact that you can't drink a lot of, you can't drink Diet Coke and eat McDonald's and live in a house that doesn't ever open a window and that there's mold maybe in the bathroom or the basement and
Yeah.
just ignore.
But how can people identify that people like somebody listening to this now? How can somebody identify in their home environment that their home environment is contributing to their chronic illnesses?
Well, there's a couple things you can do. First of all, there's an eye test that's you can take online, so you don't even have to leave your house, that you can actually test your eye optic nerve for inflammation. And you can find out, like, if you fail the eye test, which is actually a vision black and white kind of gray scale test. That's one thing. And then the other thing that you can do, which is really pretty simple to do, is you can test the dust in your home. There's kits that you can get online. You can get air tests at like at Home Depot or something like that, but I don't always recommend that as a first line of defense or a line of exploration, because you need to go to the dust in your home that's been there a while. The dust that's on top of a door jamb, underneath a dresser,
Right.
behind something, or on top of a cabinet or something like that, because that's the dust that really can give you the picture of what is the air floating around your home filled with. And so you take a little Swiffer, that's literally a Swiffer cloth, and you go around your home. On each floor, you'd use a different Swiffer cloth. You send it in, and they'll send you back a report and tell you what's the level of actually moving around mold spores in your home. And that's where people can kind of at least get a start in, like, do I have a really big problem? Is there a reason for concern? And so it's a process. And then at that point,
Right.
if you get some information back that's not what you want to know, then you would probably call in a building inspector that could do their more inspection and hopefully pinpoint where the mold possibly could be coming from. Because a lot of times people think that it's, in a small area, and it turns out like you, where they pulled down that
Yeah.
wall, there's all that
Yes.
mold.
Yeah,
Right?
all that mold was in there.
And the
Yeah.
mycotoxins you can't smell mycotoxins. That's the thing. You can usually see and smell mold, that kind of stuff smells dank and damp, but mycotoxins
Hmm.
are the airborne poison from the mold, and you cannot smell them. And they're super, super small, so you can't even see them. So
Yes.
that's what people need to realize, is you can get rid of the mold, but if you still have the mycotoxins floating around, like especially like a client of mine, I was like, you sound like you have chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And we talked a little bit more. And then I asked them, I said, have you ever been in mold that you know of? And they said, oh yeah, we moved from our old house. It had mold. And I said, did you take everything with you? Clothes,
Oh,
furniture?
yes.
And she's like, they said, yeah. And I'm like, okay, that's a problem, because some of the furniture you probably brought with you probably has mycotoxins in it. So now you're just re-exposing yourself. So it can be very overwhelming to people, but at least I just ask people, like, just be open to the thought that there is a possibility you could have a toxic bucket that's too full.
Right, right, right. Could you share an example of a breakthrough moment you've seen with one of your clients? One of the clients that came with chronic illnesses and, you saw,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't really have to do with mold, but I will tell you. So I was coaching at the corporate level, doing corporate wellness, and I was meeting with different people in this company. And she was coming pretty regularly. And about the third time in, it was 30 minutes each time, we were talking, and I just said, where do you feel like unwellness in your body, like not necessarily a symptom, but where energetically do you feel like you're carrying something? And she like took her shirt and she pulled down her shirt and it was all red on her neck.
Oh, okay.
And I said, you know, how often does that happen? She says a lot. And I said, you know, is it itch? And she said, no, it just gets really red here. And typically, a lot of times when people have thyroid issues, one of the things that I always share with people, it's not 100% true as far as absolutely, you know, show it on a test. But if you have a thyroid issue, you may have a tendency where you don't speak your mind or you don't speak up in your life or stand up for yourself. And I was kind of talking about that concept with her, and she had said, yeah, I'm in, I'm struggling with my relationship and I am not speaking up. And she explained to me some pretty horrific trauma that she'd had as a child, at the hands, she watched her dad kill her mom and he went to jail. And I was like, wow, have you ever like worked on that? That's stuck in, you know, stuck in the feelings and things like that. And she said she did a little bit, but there was just a lot. So anyways, I encouraged her to do a particular program that I have used myself personally, called the 21-day journey. And she went and did that program. I had nothing to do with that and gained from doing that. And afterwards, she learned how to work on releasing emotions and feelings out of her nervous system, because when it's not acknowledged, when you have a feeling or a thought or something and you stuff it, it stays in your system as energy that's running around like crazy and it has to get out. And sometimes it comes out as a disease, other times it comes out as an addiction. And she said after the 21 days, and she learned how to release things from her system. There's exercises you do called somatic experiencing exercises, breathing exercises and stuff like that. She's like, I'm a new person and you saved my life. And I was like, you did the work. I didn't do anything other than point you in the right direction. And I think at that point, that's when I knew in my practice, I had to speak with people about their emotions and their stress and their inner peace or lack thereof, and also talk a little bit about how they grew up and what their family systems and patterns are, because people are walking around so hurt inside and silently hurting. And it's not until somebody kind of just cracks the door and says, I'm not your therapist. I don't need you to tell me all this kind of stuff. I'm not here to do that. But I want you to know that that's a piece to your health puzzle that if you don't address, it's just going to get worse.
I agree with you. People, even for myself, you know, you always find people, even in your family, you have people that stress you out. They always have something going on and they they sort of stress you out. And I just make up my mind that I don't want nobody to stress me out. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you just
Bounce
have to,
that.
you know, cut them off a little bit, you know, to
Yep.
keep your sanity. Mhm.
I call it a bounce pass. So let's say you're having a conversation, you're in a family, and this is probably pretty good before Christmas and all this. You're in conversations with people and they bounce past you something that you're like, but this is not mine. This is not mine. I should not be holding your ball. This is your ball.
Yeah,
And people bounce past it right back to them. Obviously, you don't do it physically, but it's like you need to physically say in your mind, maybe not out loud, but that is not nothing to do with me. The fact that
right,
you didn't have money to buy a Christmas present, you know, whatever, that's your deal, right? That was your choice when you spent money doing something else or you lost your job or whatever it is. I can't carry that for you. And that's why I tell
right,
people,
right.
so many people are walking around carrying so much. And that was probably me too. I was carrying a lot of stuff that I had no business carrying when I was
Yeah.
in my 20s, 30s, and 40s, you know, that I was like, I can't carry everybody's load. And
Mhm.
so you kind of have to give it back. Here you go.
Yep.
Here's your
Yeah,
ball. Well, I
yeah,
don't want your ball, you know?
yeah. You just have to decide. You just have to if you have to cut them off, you have to cut them off. And that's why I deal with things because I said my mental health is very important to me.
Yes.
I like to sleep. I like to
Yes.
sleep, but I
Yeah.
like to sleep peacefully. I don't
Yeah.
want to be thinking about all these other things that people calling you 10 o'clock in the night to,
Yeah.
cry your show. I don't mind. I'll pray for you. But
Right.
at the same time, you need to take responsibility for some of your actions too, you know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries, right? Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Because
Boundaries. Yes.
you've
Yes.
leaky people have leaky boundaries, they have a leaky gut. And that's always goes hand in hand. And a leaky gut lets things in that aren't supposed to be there. And when you got leaky boundaries, you let things come in that don't belong to you.
And you know what I find out? The same people that complain about, they complain about the same thing. If you knew them 10 years ago, that's the same thing they complain about today still. It hasn't changed.
Yeah. And you know what? I was doing a parenting kind of webinar a few months ago with a corporate client, and I said, the two best questions you can ask your child. Well, one of them is, I understand that, and what are you going to do about it? Because it really does bounce pass it right back to them. Like, I'm not fixing this for you. What's your next, and the other one is, what's your next best choice? What's your next right step? And it kind of just stops people and going, like, especially the person you're like, if something 10 years later is still bothering them, it's like, well, why don't you go and address that issue? Talk to that person if it's bothering you. If every time the person comes and they wear the green sweater and you don't like that sweater, it's just like, maybe you could tell them, hey, can you wear the green sweater some other place and not to my special occasion? Um, but I think people just the amount of energy, don't you feel, that people spend ruminating over something that really doesn't, like, does it really matter? Like, is it going to matter a month from now, a year from now, or
No,
five?
no,
No.
no.
Stop wasting your energy. Your body
Yeah,
needs the energy to do way other stuff, right?
yeah, yeah, that's true. So as you said, you have to make boundaries. You just have to create boundaries. I said, especially when it comes to family too, you know,
Yes. Oh,
they will stress you out.
yeah, I agree.
Oh, okay. So how can people advocate for themselves when conventional treatments fall short, especially in chronic health issues? You sort of touched base on that already, because as I was saying, I've never really heard anybody talk about regenerative health
Yeah.
in the medical environment. I've
No.
never heard about it. So,
Well, and we get a bad rap because, like, I will have clients that are in cancer treatment, let's say, and they'll be like, well, my health coach gave me this, or my health coach told me to do that. And the doctor's kind of like, well, yeah, go ahead. You can do that. It's not going to really change anything, but go ahead if you want to. And it's surprising. It's like, I don't know how much work we're going to have to do to get people to realize that there's so many things you can do for your health. And as soon as we can get the conventional medicine doctors to, and some of them are, be open to it. And there are, like my sister's cancer doctor, he was open to a lot of the things, because I would go to her appointments and say, what about this, this, and this? Is it okay? Because I didn't want to mess around with their treatment plan. But I said, I would love for you to be open to it. And he was. And I think a lot of times you just have to have a conversation with your doctor. Like when I first got diagnosed with mold toxicity, and I went the route of using some prescriptions, the doctor who helped me couldn't write prescriptions. So I had to go to my internist, and I went in and I had an appointment with him. I told him what I had. He looked it up before I even got there. I said, this is what I am wanting from you. My other doctor will be in touch with you. You guys can share information. You can ask questions. And he was all on board. He's like, yeah, you're not asking me to do something way out wacky stuff. So
right.
so it's all about communication. And I honestly, truly feel that people need to go with their gut. If you have a gut feeling, which you and I probably know that that's the Holy Spirit, right? That's the Holy Spirit
Yes.
saying like, no, I don't do this, or yes, this is an alignment. Go for this, And I tell people, trust your gut, because that gut instinct is there for a reason.
It definitely is there for a reason.
Yeah.
Okay. So what future goals or projects do you have in mind to expand awareness and access to regenerative health practices? What plans do you have to
Well,
expand educating people on this?
so I have been working for about 8 months, and I mentioned with my a partner, it's a business partner. She also had mold toxicity in SIRS, and we have both restored our health, but we have still peeling layers back. And we decided that there are so many people out there that, first of all, aren't mold aware, whether it's the practitioners that are even like us, or obviously conventional medicine doctors, even functional medicine doctors, we
Right.
thought there's a big gap in education about mold toxicity. And so we created a course. It's a video-based course that we're going to do live, and it's the first time through in January, starting on the 6th of January, that anyone who is in healthcare or provider or anybody who really truly wants to learn can go through this 12-week course with us. And we're going to teach you, like the questions you asked. Well, what does it look like to have mold toxicity? Well, what do I do if I think I have it? Well, what test could I have? What do I need to do? So we've put this together this last 8 months, working really, really hard. And just yesterday, we launched our first of 3 meetings. We're having a webinar on it. And we basically are giving people a little bit of the course. We're explaining what mold is, what mycotoxins are, that kind of stuff, how it impacts your body. And then we share with them our opportunity to share the information for them to join our course. So I am really hoping that January 6th, when we kick off with that course, it will be filled with lots of people that are really ready to learn about mold, because the more providers and healthcare people and even family that can help other family to say like, hey, you sound like you have a lot of symptoms. Have you ever thought that toxins could be an issue for you? As soon as that gets going, we're going to start to realize that there's a lot of people out there that are walking around with toxic buckets that are spilling over.
Right.
So that's
great. Yeah.
thing I've been working on.
All right. That's good stuff. But what
Thanks.
you can do, what you could do is give me that information that I can put in the notes for the podcast, that persons can know about it and they can attend. If you give me that information. So we're closing soon. So if you want to tell them, okay, if you want to tell them how to get in touch with you.
Okay. So I have a website and I have my whole story on there, and you can find me at B4U healthcoaching.com. And B for you is just spelled out BEFORYOU, healthcoaching.com. And you can go on there and learn about my story. You can learn about regenerative health. I've got some blogs on there you could read about toxins and cleaning up your house and yoga and all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So we have a couple freebies on there, which is nice. There's the 8 Essentials, which is for optimal health. So it's an opt-in where you can get it, a downloadable document, and kind of go through the different areas that I would be asking you about. And you rate yourself, like, how are you with sleep, 1 through 10?
Okay.
There's a stress quiz. So it's kind of one of those websites. Once you go on there, you can be on there for a little while and connect to my newsletter so that you can be involved in just keeping up with me and what I'm doing. So that would be the thing that I would tell people. I also have a favorite tools page, which a lot of people like, because they can go on and go to that tab and you can see some of the products that I use that are what I call bio replenishers, or very natural, supportive, healthy things.
Okay. That's good. That's great. All right,
Yeah.
so we can share all of that stuff. And as said before, I'll put it in the narrative of the
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
So thank you, Bobbi, for sharing your journey and expertise. For those looking to reclaim their life, you provided both hope and a roadmap. We appreciate your time, wisdom, and dedication to helping others find lasting wellness. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.